Portland, Oregon. It's time for A Different View, with women's perspectives on the fight to end prohibition again, with Portland Dispensaries examiner and mother of four, Jennifer Alexander, and professional healthcare provider Iva Cunningham from Alternative Medical Choices, Inc. Now, here's A Different View.
Welcome to A Different View. I'm Jennifer, and Iva is with us remotely again. Hi, Iva.
Hello, how are you? How's everything going out in the big city of Portland?
Good. And you're out there in Florida again, huh, for the holidays?
Yes. Russ was supposed to go to Amsterdam, but that didn't work out, so I went to Florida, and things got a little jumbled, but I'm here enjoying my holiday with my sister and her kids. It's been nice.
Wonderful. So on tonight's show, we got lots of good things to talk about. Mostly we're going to talk about prohibition, and specifically alcohol prohibition and how it relates to marijuana. We're going to talk about what the laws are globally, legalization of cannabis, by country, how different countries evaluate them, and a little bit about Portugal too, one that's known for having decriminalized. Talk to Morocco of the Evergreen State Cannabis Trade Alliance. They're setting up standards there for cannabis growers, and they've been doing this for a few years with medical marijuana, but they're going to expand it now. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the different reactions to legal marijuana, both from the UN and locally here from our various congressmen. So
it's been interesting. There's been a lot of people calling for maintain the status quo. We talked about that a little bit earlier. It's been interesting, both the people who are saying maintain the status quo and those that are like, you're right, this is, time to end this, time to think rationally about this and discuss, a better way of doing things.
Well, and as I understand it, there's quite a few congressmen, United States congressmen coming out and saying, let the states figure it out. That's a great thing. It says we're changing things. So that's awesome.
Well, the people have spoken. It's a little hard to ignore what the people have asked for.
Right. So we should probably cut to a quick break and then come back and talk about the effects of prohibition, the things you should know.
Yep.
Be right back.
People soon, save my skin for people soon. Gonna wear it all over town. Gonna dig them up and skin them down and wear my people suit around. People suit is looking mine is sharp. Well, poor old Eddie of the dead dug up their grave, chopped off their heads, he beat them.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com. And now we're back with A Different View.
Welcome back. I'm Jennifer here with, well, not here with Iva, but here with Iva. So you Iva found this article, The 12 Bad Effects of Prohibition You Should Know. It's a 2009 article, so it's a little bit older, but it's so relevant right now. It's comparing pre-prohibition effects, with alcohol prohibition to what happened after alcohol prohibition. Right. And it highlights the problems with prohibition. Did you want to talk about it a little bit?
I did, if I could get this thing to come up. I think it's really interesting because it is still the argument is still relevant today, and it's a 2009 article that describes the end of alcohol prohibition. But like I said, it still makes sense today, and the rest of the world is way ahead in ending prohibition. And we need to evolve our opinion to challenge prohibition and bring an end to the waste of lives and ridiculousness of the war on drugs. And it's time, and this article just kind of highlighted some of those points, and I'll just kind of run through them and we can discuss them as they come up. But number one is prohibition created disrespect for the law, and I think that is absolutely rampant in even with the medical community, there's a lot of disrespect for the law, people, trying to skirt the law, and people trying to get around the law, exploiting the loopholes within the law. And back then, practically everyone broke the law. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jennifer.
You're starting to cut in and out. You were going. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So one of the things I thought was really interesting is that practically everyone broke the law of prohibition, making everyone criminals. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And the attempt at prohibition was to control a man's appetite by legislation and making crimes things that are not crimes. And that was a quote by Abraham Lincoln. And I think, that's a profound statement, because that is what is true about prohibition today, is just, we have people who want to consume or catch a buzz or whatever means. And you're trying to control that appetite, and it's never going to happen. It's just not something that's going to happen. Prohibition eroded respect for religion, and we can argue that, there are people who claim that, cannabis is a religious right. We can argue with that one. That one's not as much as important as it created organized crime. And I think this one is absolutely true. If we look down at our neighbors to the south, and we look at Mexico, and we look at other countries, it is absolutely truthful of what we're seeing in Mexico as far as organized crime and death in the streets and innocent bystanders. And and not only that, but also within this country as well. It talks about the significant organization of bootleg the quantities of alcohol people desired. But people still desire cannabis because it isn't a hangover. It doesn't have the side effects that other drugs do. And yet, people are willing to go through many hurdles to obtain that. Even violence, murder, and theft. Let's see. Number 4, prohibition permanently corrupted law enforcement, of course, system of politics. And I think we could claim that to be true. I mean, I think taking a look at mandatory minimums, one could argue the fairness of conviction related to drugs. One can also point to the number of minorities are incarcerated, and the question of fairness of who's going to jail and how many people are going to jail.
Well, and I was going to say, too, that there's a lot of law enforcement officials that I've seen recently get busted for dealing drugs. So it's not just about how it affects them to be enforcing these laws. They're a part of it as well.
And everybody has a story of an officer who took cannabis off them and just stuck it in their pocket. I mean, I swear I know everybody who has a story who witnessed that themselves, and I don't question that. I think that there's some truth to that. Let's see. Here's one that I think a lot of us have been talking about, and this is probably the one that most people are familiar with, is prohibition has overburdened police, courts, and the penal system. We can't throw everyone in jail. Right. That's what they said, during alcohol prohibition. It's still true today. We don't have the resources. We don't have the space. We don't have the funds. It doesn't even make sense to continue to spend our resources locking people up for a benign plant who hasn't killed anyone, for minor infractions, and while we let, pedophiles and rapists and murders and cases go unsolved. If we're not pursuing real crime, then we're wasting our time. Then there is no point with police force.
And it's not like we have extra time in the court, like you just pointed out. I mean, if we're wasting our time on these charges, that's, murderers, rapists, assault, crimes, all of these things going unresolved because there isn't extra. We're cramming people into this, court docket as it is. So.
Right. And then what I thought was really interesting is this prohibition harm people financially, emotionally, and morally. And we can point to all the different people who, they've come in and they've, done asset forfeiture and they've closed them down. And we know friends that are wrapped up in this, and, thousands of people who've lost jobs or are prohibited from jobs because they test positive, or they've lost their children because they've tested positive, and people who've given up because, they use cannabis medicinally and there's nothing else that works for them. And they're vilified because they're, anti-motivated or,
I really like the way that this article puts it. It says, because of the rhetoric evangelicals were spouting, it was also hard to find a decent job coming from the devil's work. This encouraged people to break the law just to support their families. And that's what I see a lot of is that even if you were that drug dealer type, it's not so easy to just say, okay, I won't do that anymore and become a respectable, part of society. There's these associations with it that prevent you from being in a legitimate industry.
And I think it also encourages people to illegally sell the drugs because, if you aren't allowed to get a mainstream job, if you're prohibited from getting a mainstream job because your urine is dirty or for whatever reason your hair test comes back tainted, and this is a lucrative job. We all can, many of us know people who are dealing illicit drugs or, working in the black market who are doing very well, and if your choice is to feed your family this way or feed your family, through welfare, which, doesn't, what would you choose? I think it does encourage, I think that it does encourage that.
Right.
Oops. Sorry. The article kind of jumped ahead of me.
The next point is that prohibition caused physical harm.
Yes.
So, and with alcohol, that was very, very true with the bootlegged alcohol being so poisonous and causing a lot of people to get sick and die. And even with marijuana, while we don't have that extreme, there is no marijuana killing people because of the black market, at least not yet. But one of our guests later in the show, we're going to talk to, one of her concerns is the different potential health consequences of contaminants. Unregulated crops are prone at least to these potentials. If we have an awareness that there's these dangers and we're actually regulating them, we can prevent those dangers. But if we're throwing it underground,
we've talked about cannabis that's been sprayed with glass shards. We've talked about cannabis that's been tainted with pesticides. We've talked about cannabis that's been tainted with other drugs
for various reasons, right?
Exactly. And there's no quality check here. There's no safety standards in place like there is with alcohol. There is no, safety standards to ensure that, that the quality of the product is safe and the person who's using it, it's a good method for them. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And one of my big things about prohibition, one of my big pet peeves, I guess you would say, about the prohibition of anything is that there's this presumption that by prohibiting it, that the industry will just vanish. And exactly. Prohibition just means that we refuse to recognize the industry and it's on its own.
Well, I think if anything, prohibition encourages it to flourish.
Right.
Because there are always going to be people willing to take the risk and go to great lengths to generate that profit because they are taking that big risk. So I see that, and it creates a market of a few people willing to take the risk.
Well, and so I was going to say the next 2 points lead right into that, which is that they changed the drinking habits of our country for the worst. And that prohibition made cigarette smoking a national habit, which is two very clear examples that prohibition does not reduce use.
Right. And you can look at some of the states that have the most severe penalties when it comes to cannabis. Those states have, Florida is one of a perfect example is that, there's a lot of drug pushers down here. It just happens to be alcohol. Everywhere you can, it's like you trip over it. It's so prolific here. It's kind of shocking to me coming from the West Coast. I think more people are drinkers because there is no other safe option because they don't want to break the law. They don't want to get wrapped up in that. And the penalties are severe. So I see people, prefer to drink instead of anything else.
Right. And then I was going to say the next point is that it prevented the treatment of drinking problems. And this is the thing that I see the most. If I really have a problem with marijuana, being able to openly admit that in a state of prohibition is not likely. But the other problem being that I feel like there's so many drugs that we're not able to treat people for because they're all so taboo. They're all, it's a crime. You can go to jail. You can lose your kids. You can lose your college funding. There's so much at stake that you can't just be like, I have a problem, as though that wasn't hard enough.
Right, exactly. But yeah, exactly. So let's create more hurdles. But even more than that, how many crimes go unreported? Because there might be the
Right.
potential of having
Meaning
being
like
caught.
like somebody breaks into your house or whatever, but you've got pot in there, so you're afraid to call the police because you don't want to get into trouble.
Violence or anything else. I
Right.
mean, anything like that. And just all that hesitation to call the authorities are supposed to protect you, because they might now look at you and arrest you for something that is.
Which may just sound paranoid, but there are hundreds of stories where this is what's happened, where somebody who felt that they were a valid victim of a crime tried to get help and was instead arrested.
Right.
And that's problematic. It really is.
Well, and I love number 11, prohibition caused immorality. And that's an argument, you can't legislate morality. But I thought it was kind of interesting. Unmarried sexual activity increased as the decade became known as the roaring 20s. We have seen, the disrespect. Somebody, one of our friends from Moms for Marijuana, Sharon out of Georgia, mentioned, she wrote this great article, on Facebook or comment on Facebook. And one of the things she said is that, back in the day when she was younger, dealers would think twice about delivering, or selling anything illicit to somebody under the age of 21 or 18 or to somebody too young to handle the responsibility. Let's just put it that way. And today they don't think twice about it. And now there's more children actually being encouraged to get into that business, if you will, because it's, less penalties for kids. But, of course that's changing. But I think that's where we've lost touch with what is right and wrong when we're talking about protecting our society, and in a situation where regulation is necessary because prohibition has failed that.
And then this final point, that it was phenomenally expensive. and that's true. It's costing us, a lot of money to fight this, war on marijuana, and we're not solving it. We're just wasting a lot of money. And same with alcohol prohibition.
It just seems like the DEA's budget is getting bigger, and it's the only one that's progressing, and the rest of us are suffering under this.
Right. I did want to say that I just posted that link to our Facebook page, so if anybody wants to check it out and read it in more detail, it's there. And we should probably take a quick break. You're listening to A Different View.
Sun and moon wed. What is to be said? Went with you I have bled him, but now with the blessed direct divine need to remind the exemplified deified seed. Plots run free unto me, take heed.
I'm Subcool from Team Green Avenger. At TGAgenetics.com, we are working on the leading edge of medical strains. Our strains are rigorously tested for THC, CBD, THCV, and other critical cannabinoids. Know your grow. Check out our genetic diversity at TGAgenetics.com, the home of Jelly Bean, Jack the Ripper, Vortex, and other award-winning cannabis strains.
And now we're back with A Different View.
You're listening to A Different View. I'm Jennifer here with Iva. Iva, you here?
I am. I was trying to close down some programs that were sucking up all the internet here. But my computer is running a little slow, so I apologize for the sketchy, choppy connection.
You're sounding much better now.
Yeah, it's much better now, so you're good. I think we got it fixed. Go ahead.
Good. Well, one of the things we were talking about, we mentioned a little bit earlier, is, all the other countries that are saying, yes, it's time to get on board here. Opinions and perspectives about, the drug war are changing, and it is time. it is time to take another look at this and approach it differently, because prohibition, just saying no, isn't working, and we've all known that. But I think there's more pressure now, especially with Colorado and Washington legalizing. I think there's a lot more pressure from other countries that are like hopeful that this will finally end and we can actually put some common sense regulation in place to protect our youth, but also to cut back on all the people that are landing in our prison systems, and the rest of their lives are ruined. I thought it was interesting to take a look at all the countries that have now legalized cannabis, and I just was just curious, and so I went to WikiLeaks Wikipedia. And just some of the countries, and I don't know how current this is, but
it says that Colorado and Washington are legal, so it's pretty current.
Well, and there's still quite a few countries that are illegal, but there are many countries that are still legal, like Cambodia, de facto legal. Let's see. Let me get to some. Uruguay was another one. Did you say, Jennifer, that I didn't see that one, but you said that one was one that was just legalized as well?
That's going on right now. I haven't actually had a chance to do a lot of reading up on exactly what's going on. I bet Russ is more informed than we are on this one.
They have proposed a bill. The president has proposed a bill. The people of Uruguay are 60% against it. But
really?
He's proposed a bill to legalize cannabis and create and regulated market.
And there's other states and countries that have done, or states as a nation state, I mean, that have done this as well. Portugal, being one that we're going to talk about here in a minute. And then looking through this wiki, there's quite a few countries.
Well, there's quite a few that actually have tolerance, like Costa Rica. It's decriminalized. It's illegal, but there's still a high tolerance. Costa Rica is decriminalized.
Cambodia says de facto legal.
Yeah, so legal, which is basically they don't care.
Right.
Which is basically, I think, how the general public feels. And they don't really care as long as, you're not blowing your kid's face, and you're not, shooting anybody up and creating, more extra crime.
Well, and one of the other places is like India, and it's because they use it, in their culture and in certain religious ceremonies. So there it's illegal, but it's legal and regulated by the government, clearly for, particular purposes. So
well, it's kind of interesting how they decrimmed it. I haven't quite made it legal, but the attitude about it is like, who really cares? We're not really going to lock a bunch of people up. There are bigger things to deal with than somebody just smoking a blunt. Let's see. India, you said, of course, Iran, regulated, legal, unregulated, illegal. I didn't quite understand that. It's legal if planted for food purposes. The one thing that I find interesting is people always want to talk about, when we talk about regulation or legalization, we forget about hemp. And we forget about how important hemp is to economies, to our environment, for many, many products. And it's a byproduct of prohibition. I'd like to see more emphasis on that, of course. But again, it's all because, cannabis is illegal. So, we have to have that conversation as well.
Right.
Let's see here. Mexico, it's decriminalized in Mexico, but they're willing to shoot each other up. And that's because it's illegal here, and there's a lot more people willing to create, great crimes, murder and mayhem just to get into this country.
And I would point out too that the Mexico decriminalization, that's fairly new. I think it says 2009 here in this wiki, which sounds about right. The end of 2009. So this has kind of been in response to all of that violence. I don't know if we've seen enough of time pass to really see what impact this has had. But
and as long as you have your neighbors to the north who are so willing to go to have such a high demand, we're not going to see a lot of change. I don't think we'll see a lot of change in Mexico until America gets on board with regulating cannabis.
Well,
it says due to the near total failure of the law enforcement system, one can simply buy the police in most areas as they do as they please.
That's what I was going to say.
So
is that until you
the
fix
perfect
that
example
corruption,
of prohibition.
Until you fix that corruption, there wouldn't be any way to change those laws. Are you still there, Iva?
We are having some sort of connection difficulty with the call there. We are trying to get it back at this moment, but currently not.
Ooh. Well, then I will go ahead and move on a little bit to the Portugal thing, and when we get her back, we can talk a little bit more about Mexico. Forbes ran an article about a year ago, a little more than a year ago now, that evaluated the country of Portugal 10 years after they had decriminalized marijuana. And this, it's a very short article, and I'm going to post it on our Facebook wall too. But basically that drug abuse is down by half. And they were only looking at your hard drugs here, hard drugs, intravenous users, and the problems associated with that. And to have that reduced by 50% is phenomenal. And they're accrediting that to, the decriminalization because of, again, one of the things that we were just saying, in the last segment was that people are less likely to get the treatment that they need when it's illegal for them to ask for help, really, And we got Iva back. Hello. So go ahead and continue about Mexico. You were saying about buying off the police, and I was going to respond to that the corruption is what keeps that going, clearly.
Right. And we've for a long time, people have been aware of the corruption, but we just don't we don't think that there's a huge effect in this country. We seem to ignore that or pacify, or not pacify, but seem to, what's the word I'm looking for? Downplay the
minimize
violence
it, yeah.
in Mexico as related to our demand here in this country.
Well, or if anything, it's used to try to guilt people in our country to stop using, as though, hypothetically, let's presume that it all is the result of these severe addictions. Yelling at us and making us feel bad isn't going to make us less likely to be addicted. As a matter of fact, that's going to probably increase drug use because now we're going to feel even guiltier and want to.
Well, I think more than that. I think we're gonna not just justify, but try to validate our purposes for using it.
Right. Exactly.
And who wants to be demoralized?
And that's all, like I said, presuming that we are believing the prohibitionist argument that this is all addiction based. And if it is, it's not as simple as being logical about it. That's one of the other things about the Portugal article that I'm going to post here from Forbes is that they points out that they're treating 40,000 people for drug abuse instead of, the 100,000 that they were locking up. So now they've got 50,000, people that are still being locked up, still being addicted, still facing the consequences of using their drugs. But 40,000 of them, they're saying are coming out, the other side treated and no longer having that drug problem. If we switch our way of thinking, and not just through like drug courts, but through true treatment options, we can actually help these people and solve this problem instead of sweeping it under the rug and behind bars.
Well, and just think about how many people would be able to get treatment for more serious drug addictions like heroin or other narcotics. Those beds are being taken by people who use marijuana because they've got a conviction. Opening up some of those spaces for people who really truly want the treatment or need the treatment, seems to be more beneficial to society than just forcing people to go through the drug treatment because of a marijuana conviction.
Well, absolutely. One of the things, and I've been involved in, the outside, I guess you would say, looking in of treatment for a variety of different situations. And the one thing that was consistent, regardless of where the person was going for treatment, whether it was court ordered or voluntary AA, a counselor, whatever, they all agree unanimously that you have to want to change. So how does mandating it encourage you to want, you know what I mean? Like it's sort of counterproductive in that way.
Well, that's like one of the mantras. If you don't want to be there, it's not going to work. If you don't want to end your addiction, if you don't want to change behavior, then it never will change.
Right.
Okay, going down the list. There's a few more, but the one thing I thought it was interesting is Canadian jurors have signed on a letter in support of ending marijuana prohibition. British Columbia legal government called for an end of marijuana decriminalization. And I think that there's more and more countries that are saying it really is time that we just get on board here and end it. And it was. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The Skype thing makes for a little bit of a lag. Sorry.
That's okay. We're getting close to a break, aren't we?
Yeah. I think we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get our guest from the Evergreen State Cannabis Trade Alliance, Morocco Kaishna Toka, I think is how you say her name. I'm going to have to make her say it because it's one of those unique ones. But we'll get her on the line here in a minute. Have her tell us a little bit about the Evergreen State Cannabis Trade Alliance, and you're listening to A Different View. We'll be right back.
Great.
I got that good vibration. Yeah. I got that good vibration. I got that good vibration. I've been traveling for so long now, you know. Around these islands, just to show that with a good meditation can cause a good vibration and turn a bad situation into a fine afternoon. Sing, I've got that good vibration. Sing, I got that good feeling. I've got that good vibration. Say, I got that good feeling. So listen up, say we gonna fill your cup because we like the joy that it brings us. And yes, we take it everywhere that we go. And to people we throw these big love grenades. We're on target almost every time. So we got the eye, the good vibeless people. And no, we don't care about things that try to bring us down. I gotta let you know, I've got that good vibration. See, I got that good feeling. I've got that good vibration. See, I got that good feeling. Now if you want it, I can get it. Ain't no place like this I've been.
Hi, this is Dan Michaels. If you're looking for professional voice talent for your commercial or podcast, I'm your man. Visit danmichaelsaudio.com for more information.
And now we're back with A Different View.
Welcome back. You're listening to A Different View. I'm Jennifer Alexander here with Iva Cunningham. Iva, we still got you on the line?
I'm still here.
And now we're going to bring on, you're going to have to say your name for me because I know I must be totally slaughtering the last name. It's Morocco what?
Natocha, you're doing fine.
So you're with the Evergreen State Cannabis Trade Alliance, which was formerly known as the Association of Medical Marijuana Producers. And that's the set of standards for growing. Tell us a little bit about how you guys originated. I guess we'll start there real quick. Just give a quick summary of that
Okay. We formed back in 2010, mostly a group of growers. I happen to also run the state's oldest collective. And we were wanting to ensure that our medicine that we were growing was free of contaminants. And we first could not find the place in the state that would assist us with testing and such. So a group of our growers came together for twice a month or so over the course of about 14, 15 months and came up with a standard. We call it patient-ready cannabis and trademark it. Scientific standard on what would be considered safe cannabis, how it would be free from mold, fungus, pesticides, and how you would examine it, etc. And then we were fortunate by the time the standard was put together, the first independent lab in the state also opened up, and we were able to hook up with them and have them start testing the product.
And you guys developed patient-ready cannabis from that, correct?
That's correct, which is the only thing of its kind in the country, a standard ensuring that the medicine is free of all contaminants.
So as a patient, I could walk into a dispensary, see this patient-ready cannabis stamp, I guess you would say, sticker, something like that, on the medicine, and know that it met this minimum level of standards.
That's correct, yes, basically, yes.
And that's something that I know it's something that a lot of people are interested in nationwide, but as you pointed out, I think you guys probably are the first ones to do this. A lot of people have
I believe so.
Have looked at
it. It should be a no-brainer from my perspective, but we were a little surprised that we are the first. I would have thought something in California had started already. I know, again, we're primarily a group of patient growers, and so this is hugely important to us personally.
Right.
And
I think finding a lab willing to work with you and everything is the challenge for a lot of people. So it's great that you guys were able to partner up with that independent lab there in Washington.
It was extremely important. We had growers previously who were doing what you shouldn't be doing, which is crossing state lines and going to other states in order to get their product tested. That's how important it was to members of our group.
Right. And so then just here in the last couple of days, you guys have announced that you're going to be the Evergreen State Cannabis Trade Alliance, and that's so that you can adapt those standards to fit the full potential consumers of marijuana, including legal recreational users. Is that right?
That's what we're hoping. A lot of our members, obviously, we have the most experience growing safe cannabis, legal cannabis in our state. And a lot of our members are hoping to be able to transition to the legal recreational market. The state of Washington, as you may know, takes the whole next year to come up how we're going to set up the producing, processing, and distributing of recreational marijuana. And so the state is looking for organizations that would have the very experience we have in order to get feedback. So it's sort of natural paradigm.
And earlier in our show, we were talking about an article that I posted on our Facebook page. It's the 12 Bad Effects of Prohibition You Should Know, which was mostly reflecting on alcohol prohibition and comparing it to marijuana prohibition in today's age. And one of the things that they had pointed out was the dangers, in prohibition. One of the things that we were reflecting on was, the bootleggers and the potential to be poisoned with alcohol and everything. And when you and I spoke before, you were telling me a little bit about the different health concerns that, come up and how these regulations can play a part in ensuring that those are less of a concern. Did you want to focus on that aspect a little bit?
Absolutely. I think this is an issue that the average patient consumer isn't aware of. In Washington State, for example, I know that the average patient consumer thinks we're somewhat regulated. And it's usually a surprise when I say no one is testing. You have to rely on the organization itself. There's no state agency monitoring us. And so that's an obvious loss. I'm sorry, what was the rest of the question? I missed that.
Oh, I was asking on the different health effects. Like you and I were talking a little bit about that study that evaluated mold in Colorado. I think that would be like, kind of...
So again, the average consumer isn't aware that this is an issue. In Colorado, the only study that's ever been done on marijuana grows that actually examined mold fungus levels in marijuana grows, they went into grows in Colorado, and 70% of the grows had almost 10 times the acceptable level of mold and fungus. And Colorado has something like 15% average humidity in Washington State in the western part, where probably most of our indoor cannabis is, legal cannabis is grown. It's probably, it's 100% humidity right now, but probably an average of 65, 70%.
Right.
My experience of having been involved in the community for over 20 years is that most patients, growers, have a problem keeping their grows sanitary.
And especially when they're, it's in this current society of prohibition, they're in garages, basements, spare bedrooms. They're not in a.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And everybody's interested in basically short-term maximizing the profits of their basement, and a lot of organizations, a lot of distributors are not thinking long-term. They're just thinking in terms of a quick cash out.
Well, and I have to presume that if I was even growing just standard house plants, in my basement, that there's some potential for that mold to. It's a moist, environment. So I think that these are things that we can. You
may not be aware, but some molds and funguses are actually fatal to a certain group of clients. AIDS patients, for example, aspergillosis can be fatal. So it's a huge issue.
Right. And again, this comes back to, I'm so happy to see Washington and Colorado both looking at this from a legal perspective, because this means that we can actually evaluate these things. We can actually find out how much of this is relevant and what we can do to minimize it and how to be safe about it. In prohibition, we don't get to ask those questions.
We already know that the 502 initiative will force the testing of the state recreation legal cannabis that will be grown. So it's a no-brainer also that eventually the medical community would pick it up.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Iva, did you have any questions for Morocco, or to talk anything about these standards with cannabis as we're going into a regulated structure? Is there things that you think are important that we should be looking at?
Well, I'm curious as to what you think are going to be the biggest hurdles. I mean, what do you think that the federal government is going to do? Do you think that the federal government is going to come in and cooperate with you? Do you think that they're going to?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. The sense out here in our region is very much, we get a sense that the city attorney regularly talks about conversing regularly with the Obama administration, with the federal government. I do get a sense we're going to be allowed to do this. I am 54 years old. I heard the first brick of the Berlin Wall coming down.
Yes.
We're going to be allowed to do this.
I know that's been the one concern, is that, now that we have legalization, what does that mean for, what does that really truly mean? Are they going to maintain the status quo? Is Eric Holden going to get involved? Is he going to try to prohibit it? Is he going to try to stop it? I think that is a concern. And so it's kind of nice to hear that Holder, and I always say Holden, it's Holder, that is, are they going to get involved, and are they going to try to help this process along to make it a cohesive process? Are they going to honor what the people want, or are they going to just try to block it? So that's encouraging to hear.
I think there's only one way it can go. Public opinion shifts greater and greater every day. Mm-hmm. In our area, the general conception is that this is going to be allowed to roll. This was not a fringe group that got the initiative passed. The support of past and almost present U.S. attorneys, FBI director, etc. So this had broad support up here. It's perceived as a win all around, the reappropriation of resources, ending the racist war.
I think you pointed out something that's really important, that this was not a fringe group, that this was a credible group of people who were not necessarily consumers or cannabis activists that pushed this initiative forward. I think that they were.
I lost you.
I think we may have just lost Iva.
Okay.
We didn't hang up on you, Iva, I swear.
Her connection in Florida is a little spotty.
But I was actually just going to cut her off to say, sorry, Iva, that Morocco, if you could really quick, two things. For one, that this is a growers alliance, right? So you're membership based, your growers
primarily,
and then patients have an interest in it as well. So how best is it for patients and growers to find out more about what you do? Can you share your website, all of that kind of contact information?
Our website, of course, is just evergreencannatrade.com, and we've got an email address up there properly linked. We don't yet have a telephone number. We don't have a person to man it yet. We've tried to keep things low budget. I'm sure you can appreciate that.
Yes.
You know how activists are doing it. We would encourage, if you're legally growing in Washington State, we've currently named a medical cannabis grower, and you're willing to apply the standards, we'd encourage you to reach out to us, get your product tested, and come on board.
Thank you so much for being with us, Morocco. I appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Best of luck to all you guys. Carry on.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So you're listening to A Different View. I'm Jennifer. We've got Iva coming and going, but I think she's here now.
Technology.
Yes. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about that response here in the United States to this legal marijuana and where it might be going. You're listening to A Different View. We'll be right back.
Brought to the table by none other than she. That is the root that she bear. Yeah, that is the fruit that she bear. And she gone ganja wise, ganja wise, gone ganja wise, ganja wise, gone ganja wise, ganja survive, gone ganja wise, ganja alive, ganja gonna win through thick and thin. Ganja gonna win, ain't never been a sin. Ganja wise, ganja alive, yeah. Let's bring an end to the deforestation. Let's call a halt to the global destruction. Time to start up a new restoration. Time to live together in our nation. When we got ganja wise, ganja wise, ganja wise, ganja wise, ganja wise, ganja survive, ganja wise, ganja alive, ganja gonna win.
And now we're back with A Different View.
Welcome back. You're listening to A Different
Got
View.
Jennifer Alexander in the studio. Hopefully you guys don't hear the echo that I hear. Well, that was a great interview. It'll be interesting to see what the federal government does. I hope that, what she said was true and that they will continue to uphold the will of the people. That's encouraging to hear, although we just don't know. So anyway, so it looks like they've lost connection a little bit. Hopefully we'll get them back here. But, one thing I think is really interesting with Colorado and Washington legalizing is that we have, absolutely changed the tide, the direction of the discussion. And I do feel encouraged that we will see legalization in our lifetime, in national level, hopefully on international level, and we can kids out of the equation. We can stop incarcerating people and ruining people's lives for the decision to consume cannabis. And the other byproduct is hemp, and hopefully hemp will become legal as a consequence of legalizing cannabis. I'm certainly tired of trying to talk to people about why, it's not so much about why I want to consume cannabis, it's why I think that prohibition should end. And it's not about my right to consume, it's not about your right to consume, it's about the right to be safe in my home, it's about the right to not worry about, officials coming in and taking my children and that sort of thing. There was another article called "UN Official Call for Marijuana Ballot Rollback," and this was from the head of the UN Drug Watchdog Agency. U.S. and federal officials challenged the ballot measures in Colorado and Washington that criminalize possession of small amounts of marijuana for adults 21 and over. Raymond Gann says that, of course, this is something that they always roll out. It sends the wrong message to the rest of the nation. It sends the wrong message abroad. he leads the International Narcotics Control Board, the INCB. Until the Associated Press Tuesday hopes that General Eric Holder will take all necessary measures to ensure that marijuana possession still use remains illegal throughout the U.S. It states that both states are holding off on plans to regulate tax drugs while waiting to see whether the Justice Department will assert their federal authority over the drug law. I can't see this being a good political move to interfere, but fortunately, the INCB has no enforcement ability. So I don't see this as being, something other than just somebody's comment or opinion. And hopefully we can, common sense will prevail and the will of the people will prevail, because it's certainly, I think what people want is the end of this nonsense, the end of locking people up, the end of ruining people's lives, just for the decision to consume cannabis. It is really time to rethink our policy, and it is time to change the way things are going. Let me see if everybody's back yet.
Yeah. And I wanted to say that the other side of that response is this letter that came out from the 18 congressmen to Eric Holder, likewise. And they're calling on Eric Holder and Michelle Leonhardt, the DEA administrator, to allow the states to enforce their laws without interference. And it says in part that that states are the laboratories of democracy. The people of Colorado and Washington have decided that marijuana ought to be regulated much like alcohol, with strong and efficient regulation of production, retail, sales, and distribution, coupled with strict laws against underage use and driving while intoxicated. The voters chose to eliminate the illegal marijuana market controlled by cartels and criminals and recognize the disproportionate impact that marijuana prohibition has on minorities. These states have chosen to move from a drug policy that spends millions of dollars turning ordinary individuals into criminals toward one that will tightly regulate the use of marijuana while raising tax revenue to support cash-strapped state and local governments. We believe this approach embraces the goals of existing federal marijuana law to stop international trafficking, deter domestic organized criminal organizations, stop violence associated with the drug trade, and protect children, which is absolutely true. And that's the thing that I hope to see more of, is us demonstrating as states that our solution is meeting the federal criteria better than their solution is, and therefore is an adequate replacement. That it's not that we're trying to force weed down the throats of 9-year-olds. You know what I mean? That's right. Not the goal of legalizing marijuana.
Down the throats of 9-year-olds. We're trying to keep it from that. And not only that, but all the criminal element that goes along with that.
And to protect society from the harms, whether it be those molds and contaminants that we were just talking about with Morocco, or the criminal history that, they're burdened with moving through life, the treatment options available to them by being able to openly admit their problems. All of these things are
the unintended consequences of prohibition too, for all those reasons listed, but also, the interstate trafficking, we can talk about the medicinal, the unintended consequences of, hemp prohibition because marijuana is illegal. Sorry, just babbling here, but I think that the tide is turning, and I think that, like you said earlier, that this is the experiment. Can we do it right? Can we demonstrate that the sky won't fall if we regulate cannabis to responsible adults? And I think more people say, yeah, it is. It will and it can. And we as a society are willing to step up to the plate and demonstrate that responsibility.
And on that note, though, that's the one argument that I hope that if the federal government does attempt to enjoin these efforts, that I hope that this is made in the defense, and that is that the public government or the federal government is endangering our states by requiring that we enforce this prohibition. I think that that's the argument that wins, because the federal government cannot expect to put us in a place of more problems in order to enforce, their policies. That they should be looking out for the well-being of the people in all these states. And if by carrying on prohibition, that means that people in Texas have to deal with these, violent clashes on the border, shouldn't people in Texas have a right to say no? I think they should. I don't think they should just have to deal with it because federal law supersedes it. I don't think that's a good enough argument for you to endanger my life.
Unfortunately, that's the argument Governor Brewer makes in Arizona for her immigration law.
Well, it is unfortunate that it's a very similar argument, but I think that the answer is are there alternative solutions that don't require the conflict with federal law? And in the case of marijuana prohibition, I don't think that there are. I think that we have to end marijuana prohibition. In the case of immigration policy, I think there are alternatives if we would just sit back and think about them. So I think that that's the problem in relating those two. But you're right that they're very similar arguments. And that's why we have to expand this topic, because you can't take it to the one extreme where it means that any state can do whatever they want. Damn the people, or damn the country. I think that there's political arguments about immigration too that do affect people outside of the state of Arizona, even if it's, disproportionately affecting Arizona. And likewise with marijuana prohibition, it affects the whole nation as well, because we're enforcing it, though, not because drugs exist. I think that the problem is that our federal government has sort of distorted their view of what their responsibility or obligation is to make prohibition last as long as it had. And I think that when we change the language of the argument, we can change the laws, because I don't think that our laws would respect the federal government endangering us.
Well, I think, not only are we changing the law, but we're also educating people and changing their perceptions, which is encouraging the shift. And as we point out the flaws in prohibition, more and more people are saying, yeah, you're right, I agree with you. Personally, we think about, our kids, and we think about, our young relatives that are exposed, and we think about people's lives who are ruined unfairly, and then we think about all the resources that are going into keeping prohibition alive and thriving, and yet the problem still exists. We're not getting rid of supply, we're not getting rid of demand, we're just locking people up, and so we're not really doing anything but just chasing our tail.
Right. Well, things are looking promising for the end of prohibition, though. I'm excited. I think that things only get better from here. So we will continue to wait and see what the federal government does and how the states respond and what the outcome is, and keep our fingers crossed that it's what we've long been fighting for.
Well, it sure would be nice to check 2 states off, wouldn't it?
It would. Well, I want to check even more off. I think there's a handful of states that are putting this through the legislature, and I'd like to see Oregon join them. I did write an article about that at Portland Cannabis Examiner blog that I write.
You had mentioned that you had gone to a meeting recently, Jennifer, where there was talk about people approaching the legislature about
I think we're going to see a lot of pressure on our legislature to address this issue from within and outside of our community, as a matter of fact.
I think that's right. I don't think it's just Oregon. I think there are many other states that are recognizing, not only the revenue potential, but also seeing that this is common sense legislation, that this makes sense for our nation, and this is the political pulse, if you will, of our society as well.
Right. So we're bringing this show to an end, and I'm Jennifer here with Iva. You're listening to A Different View. You can check us out on Facebook, A Different View 420. You can check us out on Twitter at ADV420, or you can send us an email at differentview420@gmail.com.
All right. Well, we will be back next week, next Tuesday at the same time, same bat channel. You can always catch us on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Pacific time at RadicalRuss.com. And then we do replays frequently, and I can never remember this schedule.
Well,
please help me out.
The replay of any show that you catch live at 8 p.m. is the next day at 3 p.m.
And we have one at 11 p.m. tonight, too, as well, don't we?
Right. There's one 3 hours later. So 11 p.m. tonight,
and then
Pacific time, and 3 p.m. tomorrow, Pacific time.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being with us. See you guys next time.
All right. You're listening to A Different View.
Put all my worries back into a sack. It's a counterattack for my moodiest swing. I say that my weed's a preventative thing. If you can't understand why I'm fighting the band when they take all your liquor, let's see where you stand on the road. It's a long, long road. It's a long, long, long road. It's a along.